When we talk about the Chicago Bulls from a historical standpoint, it almost seems like the first thing we start with is Michael Jordan. Jordan entered the NBA in 1984 and turned the Bulls into the greatest franchise of his generation. Everything about the Bulls from NBA history is about Michael Jordan this, Michael Jordan that, and that's perfectly fine. Because Jordan brought the Bulls into relevance, he brought them onto the big stage. However, what about before MJ arrived? The Bulls have been around since 1966, 18 years before MJ got there. Yet, nobody really knows or talks about anything that happened before 1984. Granted, they didn't win any championships back then, but they were still quite a good team. They had many seasons winning 50-plus games, they made the playoffs numerous times, and even reached the conference finals in a few of them. If you look at websites like Ranker.com, where fans rank the best Bulls players of all time, most of them are from the MJ era, which is upsetting, because Steve Kerr is obviously not the 8th best Bull of all time. But because he's a prominent figure and gets more media attention, more people know about him. That's how unknown the pre-MJ era was, despite them having many all-stars, many great players. How's it going, folks? My name's Andy, and in this video, let's talk about how good the Bulls actually were before MJ arrived. Who were some prominent players during those eras? And what made them successful or unsuccessful during that time? The 1966-67 season would be the inaugural season for the Bulls, a brand new expansion team. Up until this day, they still hold the greatest record for a brand new team in their first NBA season, 33-48. You know, that's a pretty damn good record for a bunch of misfits playing together for the first time. With guys like Bob Boozer and Guy Rogers, who averaged 18 points a game apiece, they led the team in scoring. But perhaps the most recognized player on that roster was the great Jerry Sloan, a young 24-year-old guard who made his first All-Star team that year. And of course, would go on to become one of the greatest coaches in history. The Bulls even made the playoffs with 33 wins, the only team to ever do so in their inaugural season. In fact, in 8 of their first 9 seasons, the Bulls made the playoffs. Despite their success, the issue was, well, just like with most expansion teams, they struggled to maintain their fan base. The Bulls were not very popular. In fact, they had a regular season game in 1968 where only 891 fans showed up. Overall, they had ridiculously low attendance, and regardless of how good they played as a team, they had 0 notable names. A bunch of solid players who played well together with something to prove, and they wanted to build a new career on this new team. But they can't if there is no team, and it was common back then for NBA teams to quickly dissolve due to lack of revenue. However, the Bulls' owner and founder, Dick Klein, was not gonna let that happen. In 1969, he made a bunch of moves that would ensure the franchise's stability and allow them to flourish. The first was the acquisition of Pat Williams, formerly the business manager of the Sixers. He hired him to be the general manager, and his goal was to make the team succeed on and off the court. Things like better marketing, better advertisements, everything to try to get fans to attend games. And most importantly, better players. He acquired 2 key players who led them to their first string of success: Bob Love and Chet Walker. Walker was a small forward, a 7-time All-Star who most notably won the championship with the Sixers in 1967, alongside Wilt Chamberlain. Bob Love went from a bench player to a 25-point-per-game scorer, arguably the biggest jump we've ever seen. If the Most Improved Player award existed back then, he would have won it. Not many people know about him, but Love had an incredible come-up story, being constantly doubted his entire life, but exploded onto the scene and took this opportunity in Chicago to become a star. By the end, his story turned out to be quite sad. Love developed serious back problems, forcing him to get surgery. Because of that, he missed out on a ton of contract opportunities during a time when NBA salaries were skyrocketing. He also had a stutter and anxiety, which he struggled with throughout his life. One day, he returned home and found a message on his door from his wife. It stated, "I don't want to be married to a stutterer and a cripple." As the first major star of the Bulls franchise, he had an unfortunate story. Anyway, in 1971, the Bulls acquired Norm Van Leer, better known as Stormin' Norman. Due to his aggressive playstyle in a small body, he became a fan favorite. Everyone loved him. This era as a whole was highly successful for the Bulls. Their team was thriving under the leadership of GM Pat Williams and their new players. They would frequently attract crowds of over 10,000, about 10 times more than what they got before. These years were incredibly important in setting the foundation for the franchise. Fast forward to 1976, and this would be the start of a new era, the Gilmore-Theus era. The Bulls acquired 27-year-old Artis Gilmore, previously a 5-time All-Star for the Kentucky Colonels of the ABA. After the ABA-NBA merger, the Colonels disbanded and a lot of players moved on to the NBA. The Bulls were fortunate enough to pick him up, and his game translated very nicely. In his first 3 seasons in Chicago, he averaged nearly 22 points and 13 rebounds per game, continuing to rack up the All-Star nominations. In 1978, the Bulls held the 9th overall pick, which they used to select Reggie Theus. From now up until MJ's arrival in 1984, Theus and Gilmore led the team. But in this period, the Bulls did not see much team success. From 76 to 84, they only made the playoffs twice and spent most of the time in purgatory, hovering around the 9th to 11th seeds, scratching and clawing to just make the postseason. Despite their great individual play, the lack of success can be attributed to the new ownership. Mr. Klein sold the Bulls to a new ownership group led by the Wirtz family, who were not really invested in the team. They didn't care much about how many wins they got, but just mainly how much revenue they could make. That's why they were very stingy with contracts and reluctantly signed players who were asking for too much. They did whatever it took to cut costs. To make matters worse, in 1979, the Bulls lost a coin flip to draft Magic Johnson. Had they won the coin flip, history would have been so different. If they did indeed get Magic, they probably would not get MJ in 1984, because the Bulls would not be bad enough to get a high draft pick. Anyway, going back to Reggie Theus, there's some intriguing details surrounding him. So he became a very good player, an all-star, the starting shooting guard for the Bulls from 1978 to 1984. But he basically got thrown away right before the Bulls drafted MJ. Over the years, he shared his own side of the story, including his beef with MJ, both on a personal and game level. In the book The Jordan Rules by Sam Smith, Jordan was interviewed on his thoughts about Reggie Theus. He stated, "I hate his game. He's so selfish, always berating the referees and yelling out there." It's ironic because those are the same things that people say to criticize Jordan. So Smith stated that Jordan's reasons for hating him made no sense. As he said, none of the reasons made sense. The story around the Bulls, though, was that Theus had briefly dated Jordan's wife, Juanita, before Jordan met her. And apparently, this was the real reason Jordan had beef with Theus, although we're not sure what happened in their relationship that made him feel this way. In 1996, this time Theus was interviewed about his thoughts on MJ. After witnessing the Bulls' incredible season, he stated, "I was Michael Jordan before Michael Jordan. I go to Indonesia and I see Michael Jordan t-shirts. Sure, that's Michael Jordan, but it's also me out there. The fact that I was Michael Jordan before Michael Jordan actually got here. Timing is everything. I'm about 5 years too old." You could tell that there was some jealousy in Theus. While he did come into the league before the time when endorsements and sponsorships were rampant, the truth is Jordan was way better, and he was the guy who caused the NBA to skyrocket in popularity. On the other hand, nobody cares about Theus anymore. Most people don't even know who he is. For those who've been fans for a long time, the general opinion on Theus is that he was just the man before Jordan. The man who could not get it done in Chicago, and struggled to lift the Bulls out of their misery. And that's all, folks. That sums up the story of the Bulls during the pre-MJ era. Overall, they had a good stretch of years, especially early on in the 1970s. They were arguably the best expansion team to join the NBA and immediately succeed under GM Pat Williams. But after the ownership changed and Klein sold the team to Wirtz, the team had a rough stretch from 76 until MJ's arrival in 84. The players, especially the All-Stars I talked about in this video, have largely been forgotten, but they were important in creating the foundation for the franchise. If it wasn't for them, the Bulls would have gone bankrupt like many other teams back then. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. What's your opinion on this era? Do you think it deserves more recognition? We always talk about the Bulls as if Jordan started the franchise, but the players before him deserve credit too. That's why I wanted to make this video. Thank you everybody so much for watching. I hope y'all enjoyed it, and as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.